The rain pounded against Alex Foster's cabin roof like an urgent message from the heavens. Lightning split the sky, illuminating his secluded property in the mountains for brilliant moments before plunging it back into darkness. He'd moved here 3 months ago, leaving behind a career in emergency medicine to write the novel he'd always dreamed of. So far, the only emergency had been his dwindling bank account and a persistent case of writer's block. At precisely 11:47 p.m., a sound cut through the storm's roar, something between a knock and a scratch at his door. Alex paused, coffee mug halfway to his lips, waiting to see if he'd imagined it. The sound came again, more desperate this time. "Coming," he called, setting down his laptop and crossing to the door. The nearest neighbor was 5 miles away. Who would be out in this weather? The answer was nothing he could have prepared for. When Alex swung open the door, lightning flashed again, revealing a huddled figure on his porch. Not human, not even close. Humanoid, yes, but with luminescent lavender skin that seemed to pulse with internal light. Large, almond-shaped eyes dominated a delicate face, and those eyes held such pain and fear that Alex's doctor instincts immediately kicked in. "Help," the being rasped in accented but clear English. In her arms was a tiny bundle, wrapped in something like silk but with an iridescent quality. The bundle squirmed and emitted a soft, musical whimper. "You're hurt," Alex said, noticing the dark liquid, blood, seeping through her strange garments. "Come inside." The alien shook her head, her movements growing weaker. "Cannot. Too dangerous." She extended the bundle toward him. "Please. Zuri needs protection. I am Alara. They follow me." Before Alex could ask who they were, Alara swayed and collapsed onto his porch, still clutching the infant. Alex knelt beside her, checking her pulse. Yes, she had one, though it fluttered oddly against his fingertips. "Alara? Stay with me," he urged, medical training taking over. He gathered both mother and child into his arms and carried them inside, kicking the door shut behind him. The infant, Zuri, began to cry, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Alex laid Alara on his couch and carefully took the child from her weakening grasp. Unwrapping the silken material, he found himself staring at a tiny being with the same lavender skin as her mother, though hers seemed to shimmer with golden flecks. Her eyes, when they opened, were mesmerizing, like looking into a nebula. "What do I do?" he whispered, partly to himself, partly to the unconscious Alara. On the coffee table, his phone sat charging. Who could he possibly call? 911? "Yes, hello, I have an alien bleeding on my couch and I'm holding her baby?" That would end badly for everyone. Zuri's tiny hand reached up and touched his face, and something remarkable happened. A warmth spread through him, and with it came knowledge, fractured, incomplete, but enough to understand that the infant needed a specific type of sustenance, something like a mixture of minerals and proteins. "Did you just communicate with me?" Alex asked the baby, who gurgled in response. He looked back at Alara, whose breathing had grown shallow. With careful movements, he examined her wound, a clean incision along her side that seemed deliberately inflicted. Medical supplies. He had those. "Hang on," he told them both. "I don't know what you are or where you're from, but nobody dies on my watch tonight." Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, Alex Foster's solitary life had been irrevocably changed by visitors from beyond the stars. Part 2, Learning Curve. Morning sunlight filtered through Alex's cabin windows, revealing details of his unexpected guests that the chaotic night had hidden. Alara's wound was healing at an astonishing rate, the makeshift stitches he'd applied already being absorbed by her regenerating tissue. Her breathing had stabilized, though she remained unconscious, her luminescent skin fluctuating between deep lavender and a lighter hue that Alex guessed indicated distress. Zuri, meanwhile, had proven to be both a challenge and a revelation. After experimenting with combinations from his pantry, Alex discovered the infant would eagerly consume a mixture of honey, crushed minerals from his rock collection, and, oddly enough, olive oil. Each feeding seemed to strengthen the connection between them. Fragments of images and emotions would flow into Alex's mind when Zuri touched him. "Your mother's going to be okay," he assured the infant as he cradled her. Zuri's eyes, those cosmic pools of swirling colors, fixed on his face with what seemed like understanding. A soft groan from the couch pulled his attention away. Ilara was waking, her long, slender fingers reaching instinctively for her child. "Zuri," she whispered, struggling to sit up. "Where is?" "She's right here," Alex said, keeping his voice gentle as he approached. "Safe and fed." Ilara's eyes widened at the sight of her child in Alex's arms. "You cared for her?" "As best I could. She helped, actually." "Does she always communicate through touch?" Surprise flickered across Ilara's face. "She shared thoughts with you?" "Extraordinary. Our young rarely bond with species outside our own." Alex carefully handed Zuri to her mother, watching as they touched foreheads in what seemed to be a ritualistic greeting. The air between them shimmered briefly. "Thank you, Alex Foster," Ilara said, the formal use of his full name making him realize he'd never properly introduced himself. "How did you?" "Zuri showed me." A small smile curved Ilara's lips. "She likes you. She says you taste of kindness." Over the following days, a routine developed. Alex would care for Zuri while Ilara regained her strength, learning about the infant's needs through a combination of Ilara's instructions and Zuri's telepathic nudges. He discovered that Ilara's people, the Australii, came from a distant system where telepathic bonds formed the basis of their society. "We're empaths by nature," Ilara explained one evening as they sat watching Zuri play with a makeshift toy Alex had constructed from crystals and copper wire. "It makes lying nearly impossible among our kind." "That sounds refreshing," Alex replied, thinking of the human capacity for deception. Ilara's laugh was musical. "Perhaps, but it makes privacy challenging. Imagine every emotion on display. Like wearing your heart on your sleeve, but literally." Their conversations often went this way, comparing cultures, finding common ground in their differences. Alex taught Ilara about human customs, while she shared stories of Australii art and science. She was fascinated by his books, devouring his entire collection in days, her quick mind absorbing English idioms and nuances. When his nosy neighbor Marcus hiked up for an unannounced visit, they barely had time to prepare. Alex distracted him on the porch while Ilara applied a substance from her few remaining possessions, a pigment that temporarily dulled her skin's luminescence to a human tone. With a hat hiding her slightly elongated ears, she passed for human, if unusually striking. "Your cousin from Finland, huh?" Marcus had said skeptically, eyeing Ilara's exotic features. "Second cousin," Alex corrected smoothly. "She's staying while her visa processes." After Marcus left, they'd collapsed in laughter, Zuri joining in with her chime-like giggles, though the infant couldn't possibly understand the joke. "We cannot stay indefinitely," Ilara said later that night, her voice soft with regret. "We put you at risk." Alex watched her gentle movements as she sang Zuri to sleep, her lullaby in a language no human had heard before him. Something protective and warm unfurled in his chest. "Let me worry about that," he replied. "For now, just heal." What neither said aloud was how comfortable their arrangement had become, how natural it felt to move around each other in the small cabin, sharing meals and stories, caring for Zuri together. Like a family, though neither dared name it that. 3 months transformed Alex's solitary cabin into something he'd never imagined, a home. Zuri was crawling now, leaving trails of softly glowing handprints on surfaces she touched, temporary marks that faded within hours but delighted her to no end. Her telepathic abilities had strengthened, now capable of sending complete thoughts rather than just impressions, though only to Alex and Elara. She considers you family, Elara explained when Alex marveled at this connection. Among Australiae, such bonds transcend blood. They sat on his back porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in colors that reminded Elara of her homeworld. Zuri was asleep inside, her afternoon growth spurt. Australiae children apparently developed in rapid bursts, having tired her out. I've been thinking, Alex said, breaking their comfortable silence. Your English is remarkable now. You could pass for human in town. We could create documents, a backstory, you could both stay longer. If you wanted. Elara's gaze remained on the horizon, but her skin rippled with colors that Alex had learned to read, surprise, hope, and something deeper. You would do this? Knowing the complications? Alex reached for her hand, his heart quickening when her fingers interlaced with his. I've never been more certain of anything. That night, beneath a sky full of stars that Elara could name in languages Alex would never learn, their first kiss tasted of stardust and possibility. Her skin glowed brighter wherever he touched, mapping their cautious exploration of each other. Cultural differences made for awkward moments and unexpected laughter, but when Elara's consciousness brushed against his, a gift she shared only with those closest to her, physical barriers seemed irrelevant. I see you, she whispered, the Australiae phrase for deepest intimacy. And I see you, he responded, understanding its significance. Their relationship evolved alongside Zuri's rapid development. By month 5, she was taking her first steps in forming simple verbal words, mixing Australiae musical tones with English vocabulary in a charming hybrid that made Alex's heart swell with pride. Elara secured their place in the human world with remarkable ingenuity. Her aptitude for Earth technology surpassed Alex's expectations. She manipulated digital systems to create identities that would withstand scrutiny, explaining that information architecture was similar across advanced civilizations. Besides, she smiled mischievously, your encryption is cute. Life settled into extraordinary normalcy. Alex finally wrote pages of his novel, now inspired by experiences no other human author could claim. Elara cultivated a garden of earth plants alongside seeds she'd carried from her world, creating hybrids that bloomed with gentle bioluminescence at night. One evening, as they prepared dinner together, an earth dish with Australiae spices that Elara had synthesized, a crash and cry from the living room brought them running. Zuri stood amid shattered glass from a picture frame, tears streaming down her face, creating tiny crystals as they fell. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I just wanted to see it. But what caught Alex's attention wasn't the broken glass, it was that Zuri wasn't touching the ground. She hovered several inches above the floor, her distress apparently triggering an ability neither adult had anticipated. Gravity manipulation, Elara breathed, her tone mixing pride with concern. So early. Later, after calming Zuri and putting her to bed, Elara explained that such abilities typically didn't manifest until adolescence among her people. She's unique, half-raised in Earth's gravity and atmosphere. Her development follows no predictable pattern. Will there be other surprises? Alex asked. Elara's expression grew serious. Many, I suspect. And not all will be as innocent as floating. That night, as they lay together in the darkness, Elara finally shared what she'd been holding back, that Zuri's father had been from a different caste, their union forbidden, her pregnancy a scandal that threatened both her position and her child's future. On my world, she would be studied, perhaps exploited for her unique genetics, she whispered against Alex's chest. I couldn't allow that future for her. Alex tightened his embrace, silently vowing that no one, human or Australiae, would ever treat Zuri as anything less than the miracle she was. The signal came on an ordinary Tuesday morning, exactly 7 months after Elara and Zuri had entered Alex's life. Alex was teaching Zuri to identify local birds when Elara's homemade detection device, a contraption built from salvaged electronics and components from her original equipment, emitted a series of pulsing tones. Her luminescence dimmed instantly, fear evident in her suddenly rigid posture. "They've found us." "Who?" Alex asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Australia Conformity Enforcement," Elara confirmed, moving swiftly to gather the device. "They track genetic signatures. Zuri's hybrid nature makes hers distinctive." That evening, after Zuri was asleep, Elara revealed the full truth about her past. She hadn't been merely a concerned mother fleeing prejudice, she had been a genetic researcher herself, working within the system until discovering how mixed-caste children were being used in experiments. "When I became pregnant, I knew what awaited Zuri," she explained, her voice tight with old pain. "I stole research, sabotaged labs, and fled. The wound I had when we met? An enforcement officer caught up with me on another planet. I barely escaped." Alex absorbed this new information, recalibrating his understanding of the woman he'd come to love. "How many are coming?" "A standard retrieval unit, 3 officers. Highly trained, armed with technology beyond Earth's defenses." "When?" 3 days, perhaps 4. Elara's shoulders slumped. "Alex, we should leave. Draw them away from Earth. You've done enough." "Stop," he interrupted, taking her hands in his. "We're a family. Where you go, I go." They spent the next days preparing, strategies forming and dissolving as they considered options. Running seemed logical, but Elara warned that anywhere they fled, the trackers would follow. Hiding was temporary at best. "What if we don't hide? What if we fight?" Alex suggested. Elara looked horrified. "They're equipped to subdue entire hostile populations." "Not with weapons," he clarified. "With truth. You have evidence of their experiments, right? Is there anyone among your people who would listen? Anyone with authority who might intervene?" Hope flickered across Elara's features. "Perhaps. The Scientific Ethics Council operates independently from enforcement. But reaching them." A plan took shape. Using components from Elara's equipment, they constructed a signal amplifier. If they could broadcast her stolen research data to the Ethics Council before enforcement arrived, there might be a chance. Unexpected help came from Marcus, the neighbor Alex had once deceived. When a strange light appeared in the sky, visible only through specialized lenses Alex had rigged, Marcus arrived at their door with his hunting rifle and a determined expression. "Saw something weird in the sky," he stated flatly. "And I've known your cousin wasn't from Finland since day one. Not sure where she's really from, but Zuri calls me Star Uncle, in what ain't any Earth language I've ever heard." After initial shock, Alex and Elara made the difficult decision to trust him with the truth. To their surprise, Marcus took the revelation with remarkable calm. "Figured it was something like that," he nodded. "My sister would have said I've watched too much sci-fi. Guess I watched just enough." With Marcus's help, they established a perimeter of sensors around the property. 3 other trusted locals were quietly recruited, a retired communications specialist, a physics teacher, and a veterinarian with a penchant for xenobiology theories. None were told the complete truth, but each understood enough to know that protecting Elara and Zuri was protecting something precious. The night before the expected arrival, Alex found Elara in Zuri's room, watching their daughter sleep. Her skin glowed with the deep blue of sadness. "If this fails," she whispered, "promise me you'll tell her about both her worlds." Alex wrapped his arms around her from behind. "I promise. But it won't fail. We've faced worse odds." "Have we?" Elara asked, leaning back against him. Alex smiled against her hair. "I was a bachelor writer with no prospects, and now I'm defending my alien family from space police. I'd say we're getting pretty good at beating the odds." The Australia ship descended at dawn, its hull shifting and refracting light in ways that made it nearly invisible to anyone without the special lenses Alex had distributed to their small group of allies. It landed in the clearing behind the cabin, its engines humming at a frequency that made Zuri whimper and cover her ears. "Remember the plan," Alex reminded everyone through the communication devices Elara had modified. "No heroics. We're opening a dialogue, not starting a war." Elara stood beside him on the porch, Zuri secured in a specialized carrier on her back. The child was unusually quiet, sensing the gravity of the moment. Marcus and the others were positioned strategically around the property, ready to activate the broadcast equipment if negotiations failed. 3 figures emerged from the ship, tall and imposing in fitted armor that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Their faces, similar to Elara's but with harder angles, betrayed no emotion as they approached. "Researcher Elara Voss," the leader stated, her voice carrying a harmonic quality that identified her as high caste. "You have violated multiple laws of the Australiae Confederation. Surrender the hybrid offspring and your research data." Alex stepped forward, ignoring Elara's cautioning hand on his arm. "My name is Alex Foster. This is my home, and you are guests here. On Earth, we have protocols for such situations." The lead officer's expression flickered with surprise. Clearly, humans addressing enforcement directly was unexpected. "Human involvement is irrelevant," she responded. "This matter concerns Australiae law. It concerns a child born on Earth to parents I consider family," Alex countered. "That makes it very relevant to me." What followed was a tense negotiation unlike any diplomatic exchange in human history. Alex leveraged every skill from his emergency medicine days, keeping calm under pressure, assessing threats, finding common ground in crisis. The turning point came when Zuri, apparently tired of the adults' discussion, reached out telepathically to all present, including the officers. Her innocent projection carried images of her life on Earth, learning to walk with Alex's help, Elara teaching her about stars, the small family they'd created. The raw emotional content seemed to unsettle the officers, particularly when Zuri's perception of them became clear, not as authority figures, but as threats to her parents. The lead officer stepped back, visibly affected. "The hybrid's telepathic range is unprecedented. Her name is Zuri," Elara said firmly. "And yes, her abilities have developed uniquely here. Which is precisely what my research warned would happen with cross-caste children. The data you seek to suppress proves that our rigid genetic categories harm our evolution as a species." While they talked, Marcus had quietly activated the broadcast. Elara's research data was streaming to the Ethics Council, along with real-time footage of the confrontation. The officers realized this too late, their communication devices suddenly activating with urgent messages from their superiors. The lead officer's posture changed subtly. "It appears the Ethics Council has taken an interest in this situation. We are instructed to stand down pending review." The tension didn't fully dissipate, but the immediate threat had passed. Over the following hours, a remarkable dialogue opened between Earth and the Australiae. The Ethics Council, seeing an opportunity to reform outdated policies, proposed a compromise. Elara and Zuri would be granted amnesty, with Earth recognized as a sanctuary for them under a newly created diplomatic status. In return, Elara would share her continuing research on Zuri's development, creating a framework for understanding cross-caste genetics without exploitation. Earth would gain limited knowledge of Australiae science, while the Australiae would learn about human adaptability and social structures. 3 weeks later, as they watched the diplomatic ship depart, carrying the formal treaty back to the Australiae homeworld, Alex, Elara, and Zuri stood together under a sunset that spanned 2 worlds' futures. "What now?" Alex asked, his arm around Elara's waist, Zuri balanced on his shoulders. Elara smiled, her skin glowing with the golden hue of contentment. "Now we continue what we started, being a family. But perhaps with fewer interstellar incidents." Marcus approached from where he'd been speaking with the newly appointed Australia liaison. "They're offering me a job," he said, looking bewildered. "Something about human perspective on Australia technology integration." Alex laughed. "You should take it. The universe could use more people who react to aliens by offering them coffee instead of running away." As night fell, the small gathering of humans and Australia shared a meal on Alex's expanded porch. Conversations flowed between species, tentative but genuine. Zuri moved among them, a bridge between worlds, leaving fading handprints of light on everyone she touched. Later, when the guests had gone and Zuri was asleep, Alex and Alara stood under the stars she had once fled and now faced as an equal. "Do you regret it?" Alex asked. "Coming here, changing both our worlds forever?" Alara's response was to take his hand and place it over her abdomen, where a new light was beginning to pulse, faint but unmistakable. "Never," she whispered. "Some journeys across the stars lead exactly where we're meant to be."